Do 50% of all marriages end in divorce, or is that just some propaganda that has been designed by the system to discourage more and more people from getting married and, in other words, destroy the traditional family? Because the statistics actually show that on average, the number of divorces a year are about half the number of marriages. Say if we had 2 million marriages this year, we usually on average will have 1 million divorces. But if you just think of it that way and say, okay, 50% of all marriages end in divorce because this year we had 50% of divorces to marriages, that's just the same as saying 50% of people died this year if the death rate is half the birth rate. So it just doesn't make sense. What happens is, if you really look at the data in context and over the lifetime of marriages, as estimated that the average marriage would last 8 years per divorce data, then you realize that that percentage is much more towards 39%, 35%, or 33% the further you go down the road. So if you look at marriages, that if you take all the marriages from say the year 2000 and then you look at the number of divorces, then the divorce rate per those number of marriages, it's more towards the 20s than towards the 50s in percentage. And moreover, that's not considering the fact that 40% of new marriages are actually the people who have been divorced remarrying, meaning 40% of new marriages involves someone who is getting married not for their first time. So not only the divorce idea that marriages fail and people just doesn't work for them is not correct, because even when their first marriage fail, people still go on to get married at a rate of about 65% for men and 50% for women. It tells us that not only the concept that the traditional family structure or marriage structure of society is dying is a big lie, but it also tells us that if we include that statistic and data, then the divorce rate becomes even much lower. So what you should really be worrying about is not whether your marriage will succeed or not, because the statistics show that at worst you're looking at 30% to 35% odds of your marriage failing, but you should rather be worried about getting married to the right person or marrying right. And the only way you can do something right is studying it and becoming a master at it, meaning you got to do the work. Otherwise, then you become part of the statistics. To get this data, you simply have to, you can use AI, you can go to ChatGPT and it's going to give you marriage statistics perhaps for the last 20 years or 25 or 40 years, and also divorce statistics for that same period of time. But if you take now the estimation that the average marriage lifespan will be 8 years or 10, 12, 16 years, and then you measure the divorce rate of this year, not to the number of marriages this year, but to the number of marriages 8 years ago or 12 years ago or 16 years ago based on the length of a marriage, then you realize that the further you go, this percentage drops, which makes sense because the longer you stay in marriage, the less are your chances of actually getting divorced. Not only for the first reason that you just weathered another year that you could have divorced, and secondly, you've learned and bonded even deeper with your partner. So really, what the 50% statistics of marriage failure rather communicates is that for the first year of your marriage, your chances of failing are about close to 50% or higher than the 10th year of your marriage. So the longer you stay in marriage, the more chances that your marriage is going to work. And this explains why our grandfathers had longer marriages, because they weren't prone to just take quick decisions on whims. Okay, something happens and immediately let's get a divorce. They were more likely to weather storms together, to think things through and actually endure before taking drastic decisions. But today, with everything facilitated towards encouraging the destruction of the nuclear family, I really think people just simply get a divorce. But then the funny thing is, the second marriage, the third marriage, the fourth marriage are more likely to fail than the first marriage. So you have one shot to get it right, and if you learn and study and commit yourself to it and not just get in whimsically, then your chances of success are way high.